Hello guys, my name's John, I'm the Geeky Fanboy, and welcome back to my regular Doctor Who Monday review. I'm taking a look at past Doctor Who stories, and so far we've taken a look at the Doctor Who movie and the first episode of Series 1, which means today we're gonna look at The End of the World, episode 2 of Series 1. So this is like our first proper episode where we get introduced to all the fun things that happen in Doctor Who, you know, time travel, weird aliens, villains, robots, and I don't know what. So I like this episode a lot. I think it serves as a very good continuation to like Rose as an introductory episode, because the first episode, Rose, is very good for like getting to know the characters, getting a feeling for the characters, and now the second episode I think is very good for getting a feeling of what Doctor Who, like the show, the concept of the show, is actually about. Because in this second episode now, we get so many like new things, or we get introduced to so many things that are so classic Doctor Who. Like we get to see time travel, we get to see how the TARDIS travels, we experience what time travel into the future is like, we get to see aliens for the first time, and just like Rose, it's something I really like about this episode, just like Rose, we're getting introduced to this new thing and get to experience alongside her what it's like to travel in the TARDIS, to travel with the Doctor. So I think that's a very good aspect of this episode, and you kind of like Rose in this episode, that you kind of share her reactions in this, and that just like her, you're just kind of standing there and have to take what's being thrown at you, whether it's, well, literally spit, or just, you know, some weird looking tree people, or a bitchy trampoline, and all those sort of weird things. Speaking of Rose, she does take a bit of a step back in this episode, presence-wise, I think, because like I said, it's like her first big adventure, so for her it's a lot of experiencing new things and figuring out how this works. So upon rewatch I realized she doesn't really do an awful lot in this second episode. She's mostly just there, staring at the aliens, being like, you look at them and they're alien, and that's it, and she's there so the Doctor can explain stuff, you know, how the language circuit thing with the TARDIS works, that she can understand aliens, that you can just see what this reaction to time travel and so on is like, and her getting into danger and having to be saved by a Doctor. So unlike in the first episode where she actually gets to be like part of the action and solve the problem and save the Doctor, this doesn't really happen in this episode. So it's more about like the wonders of time travel and what happens in this. And while I think it's a bit sad that she like gets a bit sidelined in this, I also think it kind of makes sense, because it's this first big adventure for her. She doesn't really know yet how this works, and of course she would get into danger in this kind of situation, so the Doctor has to save her. So yeah, while I do think she gets a bit sidelined, I think it makes sense within the story of the episode. And also in general, I usually don't have so much of a problem with the companions getting sidelined a bit if the parts with the Doctor are very good. Speaking of the Doctor, Christopher Eccleston again in this is just fantastic, to use his favourite word. I really like him a lot. You see a lot of his like sassy nature in this, you know, air from my lungs and all that, and oh, what you gonna do, moisturize me, you know. There are so many good lines in this that just feel like so Doctor-ish, and they make it just, it's just so much fun to watch him and enjoy this, to introduce Rose to time travel, to be able to finally share this again, to share this adventure with someone, and to be like, oh, this is what's happening, and I can explain this to you, and it's this super grand but also sort of strange thing, because, you know, it's sort of like a first date, first adventure sort of thing, and he's taking her to the end of the world. Like, maybe not the best idea, but it's just like, you would think that's something the Doctor would totally do. What I also like about the Doctor in this episode a lot is that we again get teased about like his darker side, the side that has to do with the Time War. There is this wonderful scene with him and the tree woman whose name I unfortunately forgot right now. I'm sorry, but when they Jade or something, I think it's Jade. When they go to find out what's happening with like the vent circulation or something like that, to find out why it's so warm, and they have this silent moment together where she acknowledges that he's a Time Lord without saying the word Time Lord, but just that she says he knows what species he's from, and that she's sorry what has happened to him and his people. That moment, and I like that the camera just stays on the Doctor in that moment, because Christopher Eccleston just in this one or multiple facial expressions, however you want to put it, there's just so much there. You immediately understand what's going on there. How much grief, how much anger, how much sadness must be there, even though you don't really know what it is. But what I also noticed, I didn't notice this the first time I watched this episode, but I now notice this upon rewatch. He actually like cries a tear. You don't really see it, but if you pay attention, you see that he actually has like a silent cry moment before he like takes her hand, and there's just so much there, and it also feels like very in tone with the character of the Ninth Doctor, that he still has this kind of stern, serious face, but there are so many emotions underneath that he can't help himself but sometimes just break, even though his face doesn't really, like, doesn't try to show it, but he just can't help himself. Like, just this single moment alone is so good. So our villain in this episode is Cassandra, a very odd villain if you think about it. Like, she calls herself the last human and all that, and obviously that would come into conflict because Rose knows that this is her planet. Sure, like billions of years in the future, but this is her planet. So I find the conflict there quite interesting. Also, as a side note, I think there has been some talk about Cassandra in this episode, because there's this one line she says, "Oh, this is where I used to live down there when I was a little boy." And some people were like, "Oh, is Cassandra like transgender or whatever?" And like recently it has gotten a lot of talk also in some other reviews I've seen, and honestly I never really paid that much attention to it. I was just like, this is probably just something Cassandra either would just say because it's Cassandra, or she probably was a boy, and then if you think about what Cassandra is like, she's probably the kind of person who was maybe like, okay, that in the future this might be actually a fashion thing, that you just change your gender through surgery. I mean, if you think about this, is very well something that could be a thing in the future, and it just seems like something Cassandra would do because it's Cassandra. So I've never really thought about that, and I honestly don't give it much thought now. Yeah, like her motivations and all that, yeah, like not a big thing. Like at the end it's still all about money. So yeah, that's still a thing. I mean, it does make sense because, you know, it is always about money, even in the future. And she dies for Doctor Who, she dies in a quite horrible way. Like, I don't mind, I'm used to that shit from the movies I watch, but like, she explodes in there. Like, you see her explode in her, well, non-existent guts flying around. For 2005 children's family show, whatever. Bold move. Also, I really like this scene because it shows, again, this very serious side, in almost in a bad way, that the Ninth Doctor especially also had. That even when Rose said help her, he was like, no, everything has its time and everything dies, and she did a bad thing, so this is what she's gonna get. And that there's no regret on his face, it just stares her down as this happens. And I think this is also like a very good quintessential moment for Christopher Eccleston's Doctor, where you just see that, sure, he can be sassy and cool and funny, but he also has those not only vulnerable but just like very serious and grim moments. And also a scene I enjoy a lot is at the very end, when they travel back into Rose's time onto planet Earth, and we hear the Doctor say for the first time what has happened to him, that he's a Time Lord and he's from the planet Gallifrey, and then his planet is just gone. He doesn't say it, that it's his fault, sort of, but I just enjoy the scene at the very end, because the entire episode Rose had to kind of deal with this thought of, yeah, theoretically my planet is still there in my time, but now I've seen my planet die, and like I'm the last human in this scenario, sort of. And it kind of has like a full arc that at the end the Doctor, to her, is like, this is what we've just experienced, this is reality for me. This is something that really has happened and I've had a hard time dealing with. And I enjoy this scene a lot, and I like Rose a lot in this scene because she's very understanding. Like, you can see how compassionate she is, and she wants to help, and that she just says, well, you're not alone anymore. You've got me now. You've got a friend. You don't have to be alone anymore. You can travel with me. And then they just go for chips, and I think that's a very nice ending to that episode. So yeah, I enjoy this episode a lot. Like, I think it's a very classic Doctor Who episode. I think it's a very good introductory episode, even better than Rose, in a way, because Rose is, like I said, about getting to know the characters, and this episode now is getting to know about what Doctor Who is. Like, what's the deal when you watch Doctor Who, and then you watch this episode, because it shows you. It shows you time travel, it shows you sci-fi, the aliens, some of the aliens designed like really weird, kitschy, whatever. I mean, it's 2005 Doctor Who, like, come on. It works well enough, and sure, Cassandra is a villain, cheesy, weird, lazy design, but I think she still sells it as this woman who just wants money. So yeah, I enjoy The End of the World a lot. I think it's a very good episode. It's especially good for, I think, to introduce someone to Doctor Who, especially if you want to start like from the very beginning, like at least of the revival, and I think it's a good introduction to just what Doctor Who as a whole is about, like concept-wise and also just feeling-wise, because you get the cool sci-fi stuff, you also get like the slightly odd, campy, cheesy stuff, you get some very good Doctor moments, and it's just a very classic Doctor Who episode, and that's what I like about it. So, those are my thoughts on The End of the World. What are your thoughts? Put them in the comments below. Is this an episode you enjoy watching a lot, or is it an episode you have not seen in a while, or you hate? Do tell me in the comments below what you think. So I hope you enjoyed this little review. Like I said, I try to keep this up and make this a Monday regular thing. If I don't get to do it, please, excuse me, like, I'm very bad with keeping up a schedule and all that. But yeah, like I said, I'm trying to make Monday a Doctor Who thing. Another review, not Doctor Who but something else, it's gonna come out also this week, so you're getting at least 2 videos again this week, so I hope you're looking forward to that. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't done that already. I hope you enjoyed this little review, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.